Hello friends, today we're here at our garden and I just wanted to welcome you to the Suburban Appalachia channel. And today we're going to be harvesting our cabbage and starting to make some kraut, sauerkraut. I have a simple recipe for it. It's a recipe that my grandfather used and where I grew up in Stokes County, North Carolina. It's a simple way of doing it. I wanted to share it with you and thank you for watching the video. And please forgive my shakiness of my camera. Sometimes it's hard to hold it in film, but thank you for joining our video, and I hope you'll find this interesting. And it's an overcast day, but as you can see, I've been up picking squash and cucumbers, and I've done broke a sweat. It's a real humid day, but I praise God for it, and glad y'all could join me. And I'm going to show you here in a little bit our cabbage. Hello friends, back again, and this is our garden that I've been doing videos about. As you can see, our corn is really coming on up. It's past 6 foot tall, most of it is. Getting little ears on it, starting to tassel. But here's our cabbage. And I know everybody's looking at my garden and said everything's real close together, and that's why I do it this way, to show you how much you can grow in a limited space. Here's our cabbage. And these have been growing for since the end of March, and some of them are ready and some of them aren't. I'm going to harvest the ones that's ready for, to be cut today, and then we're going to chop them up and make sauerkraut, and I'll show you an easy way of doing it. Some of the cabbage I'm going to leave till the corn comes in, and then we'll be making the old Blue Ridge Mountain favorite mixed pickles, which is also a fermented dish. But as you can see, our garden is tight packed. Our tomatoes are just full of green ones. I don't know if you can see them, but they are absolutely loaded. And I'm hoping to have some tomatoes here before long. But we're gonna go ahead and cut this cabbage and see how it chops up. And I'm excited. I have a new food processor that I'm going to use to do this to make it easier, and we'll be back with you in a moment and we'll start cutting some cabbage. Well, we've harvested 8 heads of cabbage. I'm going to leave the rest. I probably got 12 more heads left back in there, and I'm going to let them grow a little bit longer. I'm not going to let them go too much farther, because we have a real problem here with earwigs getting in your cabbage. After you keep the cabbage moss off, the earwigs seemingly take over, and last year we lost our cabbage to earwigs. So this year, as a pointer, I'll share it with you. I used liquid 7 on my cabbage for a while, and then I put pyrethrum dust on them, and I dusted them pretty heavy before they started heading, and that dust goes down in around the base of the plant, and the earwigs don't like it. So far, no signs of earwigs, and I was really concerned. As it gets humid and damp, earwigs seem to travel more, and as you can see, we've done pretty good this year with cabbage. This is I wanted to show you in relationship to my hand. Pretty good head, but I'm going to start out with 8 heads and see how that goes, and if I need some more, I'll come back and cut another one. But I'm going to let these other ones grow and get a little bigger for our mixed pickles. And we don't actually pull up our cabbage plants. Those green leaves around there are delicious. You can harvest them and wash them and cut the stem out and cut them up and freeze them, and they call it crop cabbage. My wife's grandmother, she loved crop cabbage, and it's really delicious, and no part of the plant goes to waste. And all the outer leaves that I strip off my cabbage, I take and put them in my compost pile over at the gourd houses. You can see over there I got an open compost pile. I think it's very important to your garden to put the leaves and leftovers from your produce that your land has grown back into the soil, and I think it's a blessing. God bless this soil to give us some food, and these little plants are God's creations, and you know, they grew good for us and give us food, so why not put them back into the soil as they decompose, and this is their forever home. And as you can see, change the subject, the honeybees are on, and the bees are on our corn tassels. I don't know if you can see him right there. It's some kind of little bee, a black bee, and he's got pollen all over his legs. But there are little bees all in this corn, and I just want to share it with you. Well, next we'll be going to our canning kitchen up in the basement, and we'll get started shredding this cabbage. Yes, I went ahead, since we had a new food processor, and tried it out on a few, but I want to show you how I prepared the cabbage before we started shredding. I've already shredded most of these because this was new and I had to work through it. But we take our cabbage, and I'll put this back where you can see, and I'll split them in half. As you can see, it's beautiful on the inside. These are two of the small ones that we had. Then I'll quart, remove the core, we don't want that. Then I'll chop it up into wedges, and then I'll still end up breaking them up as I put them in there to get them to fit in the food processor. That'll be a little later. I'll show you how this works. It actually worked out real well. But I'll get rid of the core, and I was really thankful this year. Last year we lost all of our cabbage because of bugs got in it, and then we had COVID at the end of the season, and I've noticed this year when I'm holding the cameras, a lot of people have been sick with COVID, but I've noticed now I have tremors in both my hands, and so sometimes when I do my filming and I'm holding the camera, it's real shaky, and I apologize, but God is good. I'm happy with these cabbages, but I wanted to show you how they looked. There's still plenty more I could cut today, but I'm going to save them and let them go a little bit longer, because we're going to be making some Blue Ridge Mountain mixed pickles. It's delicious. This is going to be some good kraut come this winter, and it'll be good. And people say, oh, why do you go to all that trouble? Well, you just can't duplicate this homegrown taste. And my grandpa's kraut recipe is so simple, and I wanted to share it because anybody can do this. I've almost got this dish pan here full of cabbage shredded, and I'll show that to you in a little while. But we want to go ahead and show you how to cut the cabbage up. Be very careful. Your hands get wet with cabbage juice, and you can really cut yourself really bad. I really suggest to you to use sharp knives when you're doing things. I've got cut and hurt more with a dull knife than I have a sharp knife. A little pointer from somebody that's clumsy. But as you can see, beautiful cabbage. I'm thankful for them, and I want to show you how I prepare them to put them in the food processor. And we'll continue shredding, and here in a little bit after I get this done, we'll show you how to put it all together and put it in the jar. Hello, we're back in the canning kitchen, and wanted to show you this recipe and finish it up. We was blessed to get us a heavy duty food processor to shred this cabbage with. You can use a knife. My papa used graters and knives to do this, and this is my grandpa Lawson's recipe. Very simple, and I'm from Stokes County, North Carolina, and lived in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Now we live in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I just want to share this way to make kraut. It's a simple way to do it. It's delicious, and we're going to shred this cabbage. And this is the first time that I've used this food processor, so there was a little bit of a learning experience. But it's Cuisinart. It's doing a great job, and it's a lot easier for those of you that's got a lot of cabbage or any kind of vegetable to shred up. But I'll show you. I've almost finished shredding. I wanted to do some experimenting before I filmed a video about the shredding section of kraut. But it's fairly easy. This is working out real well. So I'm going to do this head of cabbage that I've got chopped up. It's been very easy, very good cabbage, and we'll go ahead and get started. Now my container's full. I'll dump it out and we'll keep on shredding. I've just got a few more cabbages to go, and this is why I like doing this in our canning kitchen. I got a linoleum floor. There's nothing in here that's real pretty. So I'll clean her up real good when I'm done. I'll save the mess upstairs in the house. So it's cabbage everywhere. But that's okay. That's the fun of this. I wanted to show you how I sterilize my jars. These are done. I have a canner sitting on top of the stove, and I fill it with water and I get it boiling, and I put my jars down in the wire basket to make them easier to retrieve, and I boil them with the lid on for 5 minutes. And after I get them out, I place them on a clean cloth, like a towel, upside down till we get ready to use them. But I want to share that with you. Okay, we've got all of our kraut shredded, and you have to forgive me, I got kraut all over me, or cabbage. So I want to show you how much those made. It made this dish pan full of shredded kraut. It smells so good. I've tasted it, it's sweet. But I'm going to show you here in this first jar what we need to do to get it in the jar. And you can use a funnel. A canning funnel makes it a little bit easier to get it in the jar. But all we're going to do, we've got a dozen sterilized jars back here covered up. But we'll take that funnel and take our hand, and this is a messy job, but it's fun because you've done all the hard work. And we'll fill these jars up, and when I get it about half full of cabbage, I will take it, and it's real juicy cabbage. And you want to keep pressing it down in there. And I have a cabbage or jar packer. It's just a piece of wood that we picked up. But notice here in the jar, if you can see, I'm packing that down. And I see the juice to start coming up in it. And that's what you want. So pack that down real good. Do about half of a jar at a time. And then you can finish off with your handfuls. And these jars are sterilized. Some people mix their salt in before. Never had real good success here with that. This is, like I say, my grandpa's recipe, and it worked for generations in North Carolina. And I remember how good their kraut used to be, and that's the way we're doing this. We're almost topping this one off, packing it as tight as I can, and I can see, I don't know if you can, but there's juices coming up in the jar, and that's what you want to see, because it's going to go with the salt, and that salt will, a tablespoon, it'll be enough to protect the kraut. I believe that's going to do it, and set up a perfect environment for fermentation, and that's what we're looking for. And I fill my jar to about right there, if you can see, and we'll go ahead and fill all 12 of these jars. And I'm probably going to have to sterilize some more jars, but we'll see how much those 8 heads of cabbage made for us. And then we'll finish this recipe up, and thank you for your patience. Okay, we're ready to finish these up. I've actually made 13 quarts. So I've got 12 or 13 sterilized jars that I chopped the kraut up with a food processor and put it in. And now comes the salt part. And as I was cutting the cabbage and filling the jars, I saved back the liquid after I got finished packing these jars. And I cleaned up and wiped the outside of the jar off. But this recipe is very simple, and it's time tested. Some people say, well, this don't work. Well, I was raised up on it, and it works very well. And this was my Grandpa Lawson's recipe. And here I have coarse kosher salt. You can't use table salt. It must be cannon salt or kosher salt with no iodine in it. Table salt will not work. And this is a time-tested recipe, and this is how easy it is. I'm going to finish each jar up with a rounded tablespoon of salt, and you put it right on top of the kraut. And I'll go through here and I'll do these. And that salt will leach down through the kraut, and it's just the right amount. And like I say, this has been time tested. You can go online and read all kinds of things about fermenting cabbage to make kraut. And there's some people use scales and measure their salt in grams. But 1 tablespoon of salt per quart of packed cabbage is perfect. And I know because, like I say, I've seen this recipe when my grandpa was alive for years. It works, and I've enjoyed doing it. It was fun to try out a food processor. Last time I made kraut, I used a mandolin, and it worked me to death. And so I look for easier ways of doing things. But this kosher salt will leach down through the cabbage, and I took that packer that I showed you and packed this cabbage down real tight, real firm. And it's got juice in it, and that's what you want to see. And you don't have to get in a big hurry when you're grating this kraut up. If you grate it, if you chop it up with a knife, or if you use a mandolin cutter, take your time and put it in a big pan and give the juices time to, some of the juice to come out of the cabbage. It just makes it better at the end. No rush. No processing, because these will go on our shelf here in our basement and ferment, and I'll keep a check around the top and be sure there's no mold on them. And if you see mold, you need to stop and check your conditions of where you're storing your can. And that's why it's important to start out with a sterilized jar. And I had 1 pint. I'm going to give this one a little more. There we go. I had 1 pint left, and what I'm going to do with that is put it in a pint jar and put some vinegar in it, and maybe a head of dill or dill bloom in it, and just have some vinegar cabbage in the refrigerator. But here we have this juice that I reserved, and what I want to do is be very careful. But pour that juice till I cover the salt, and you'll have plenty of juice left. But this just helps get the salt going and start dissolving and breaking down, and I'll fill with this juice till I see it start coming up in the jar. And I know I'm about right. And I saved the juice when I grated and filled the jars. I was sure that I didn't, whoop, I messed that one up. But that's okay. The flies smell the cabbage and they're trying to come in. I just want to add just a little bit of juice. Just to top it off. This one I'll take a spoon and remove some of it where I overfill, but that's okay. This ain't perfection. I'm not perfect, nobody is. And that's the point of these videos. Everybody tries to make a science out of everything. People have been doing this since the beginning of time. And it's not exclusive. You don't have to spend a bunch of money to do it. It's fun, it's simple, and it's easy. And I'll just take my salt spoon and remove some of this that poured out. I should have strained it, but that's okay. We're not, like I say, this isn't rocket science. Some people try to make out that it is, and it's not. To try to get you to buy a product or something that they have, and that's why I'm showing you. Anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. And it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to making the mixed pickles that'll be coming up. And hopefully here I got some cucumbers coming on. We'll be making some dill pickles and some great leaf pickles in the jar. Very simple, very fast way of doing it. It's also time tested. All these recipes that I'm showing you is something that I just didn't come up with. It's been passed down for several generations, and very pretty in the jar. And so what I'll do is I'll look at them and be sure they're not full, because you can get in trouble with that. It can boil out. We don't want that when it's fermenting. So I'll balance these off, and that's why I use this spoon. It's so simple. And I'll balance these off, and that's looking pretty good there. That one's a little thirsty. Get a little more. That one's a little full. That's looking better. And like I say, this is not exact, but that tablespoon of salt, heaping tablespoon, is all you need, and it works great. Okay. Now, after we got everything finished up here, I'm going to take these sterilized lids, and I like using ball lids. Sometimes when you buy jars that's not Ball or Kerr or Golden Harvest, the jars are fine, but sometimes these can lids are not as good, I think, as a name brand, but you can buy them separately. But what I'll do now is I'll just put on a lid, and I'm not going to screw these on real tight. Remember that air's got to escape. The gases that this creates while it's fermenting, it needs some escape. So you just want to loosely put them on, and I'll finish capping these other jars, and we'll get these on the shelf in the basement. But when I get all these capped off and some rings put on them, we'll come back and I'll show you what they look like. Okay, we're back, and we finished this up. As you can see, real pretty in the jar. We got our jar lids on, didn't over tighten them because the fermentation creates gas and it needs to come out, and it'll be able to burp as it needs it. And what I'll do is I'll come back and check in a couple of days and be sure it's not got any mold around the top. If it does, I'll get that can out and quarantine it from the rest of them. Actually do away with it once you get mold started. It's not much you can do. But these will go over here on the basement shelf. This recipe, like I say, was my grandpa's method, the way he did it. And it is time tested. It's not something, but it's so simple to do. It's not something that you need a lot of equipment to do. I used a food processor, but Papa, he used a knife to cut everything up real fine. But it's a fun project. It's something you'll enjoy when the snow's flying this winter. It's a little taste of your previous summer, Lord willing. But thank you for joining us today for this video. I hope you liked it. As time goes on, our lighting will get better, our cameras will get better. This camera stand I've got now is a little more stable. I'm hoping it'll keep improving, but thank you for joining me. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and a like, and subscribe to the Suburban Appalachia channel. And there's several videos already posted on canning and gardening. Thanks so much for joining us, and God bless each and every one of you, and we hope to see you again real soon. And you all have a nice day and happy canning.